Uh, hey guys, a very warm welcome. I believe my voice is audible to all the participants. We have all back after a couple of days, and we have been initially working on our Doubts app project. I believe you all remember that we have started working on government examinations preparation quiz application. So we will be continuing our session. I would like to welcome Meenakshi Chauhan, Nitish Arora, Vishesh, Hussain, Vishal Arora, Sai Ram, everybody. Thanks for connecting. So we'll continue our project session from today onwards. And today we have a guest as well. Your camera's not on. So today we have a guest as well, Mr. Praveen Kumar. Praveen is a team member who works on corporate applications development, and he is associated with Hackveda since the very beginning once we started Hackveda. So I would like to introduce him, as I believe he's just connecting with us, and I would like you all to welcome him. I believe Praveen, just give us a moment. Yeah. Yeah, so I would like to welcome Praveen.
Everyone.
So Praveen has been working with us since the very start, and in fact, when I started my company Hackveda approximately in 2011, so he was the first team member who added to the team, and he took about all the corporate relations and everything. Along with the technical expertise, he has various expertise on management of the team and everything. So from the very beginning, we are connected. And currently what he is doing is he handles all the web applications project, the international clients and the national clients, whatever projects we do. So he takes care about everything. So in our current project, the Doubts application project, which we all are currently taking up, in this, we will be looking that how the core components which we have been designing about all the services, we will be taking care about that, as well as the next thing which you will be learning right from today onwards, that when we start development of a corporate project in a team, there are a lot of understanding required so that the complete team can communicate to each other. And using this communication, there are certain measures which have to be taken care while working on the corporate product development. So once we design a corporate product, generally a large team of people accounts to that, and they all contribute their unit to that particular corporate project and to that big project. And in order to accomplish that well, the most famous or the most used framework in the corporate web application designing world, or else the product designing world, is a model view controller based framework. So there are a lot of scaffolding tools and MVC frameworks available. And in fact, for every different language, there is a framework available, as well as there are frameworks which are in fact available, which can be used with multiple languages also. So today what we will be doing we will be completing our service part, so that you will get to have an idea about how a basic service works, and the login and register service, as well as I would like to give you a quick introduction to all other services also, which we have coded up till now. Followed by, you are going to get an introduction to model view controller approach of designing the applications, so that you can contribute to a corporate project. And now, since a lot of team members will be working over the project, so you guys would need to understand that why model view controller would be important in order to understand the complete functioning of the project, in order to implement it, in order to contribute new functions into the product, and really produce the product for production, okay, so that the consumers can use it. So we will be having all of that. And Praveen, he's an expert with web applications designing. He's an expert with mobile applications designing, and a lot of stuff we have been doing together, along with the education part, the technical products, the understanding of various components of application designing and how to successfully deliver it to the end user or to the corporate user. So that's what he has a complete expertise on. So a very warm welcome again, Praveen, for joining.
Thank you so much for the pretty good, I would say, introduction about things. I feel that through the understanding that I have, I will be able to explain the concepts pretty well. And I think today, if anyone has any understanding related to any of the MVC concepts, they will be able to apply that, and they will be able to understand how actually things are worked in a corporate manner, in a corporate environment. Obviously, there are different modules that everyone is working on, and there are different part of the application that everyone can work on, and simultaneously they will be working on. So today they will be actually getting to know about how to work in a collab environment.
That's great. So that's great. So guys, I hope you all are pretty excited about understanding how these real applications are working with the actual industrial exposure, about how the developers actually design great applications at the industry, and the same insights you'll get to know, so that you will understand that insight in advance and you will be able to build up nice products and push those products for customer use. So let's go for it. I'm sharing my screen for all the participants. We'll be having a complete Q&A discussions at the end of the session as well as from now on, Mr. Praveen will be available and he'll be taking care of all the projects for you guys will be working. Let's go for it. As well as there is a very nice question which I've got in the initials. So why class is happening after a long break? So actually we are having this class after a long break because our team was hardcore working on certain projects, and we have to wind up certain projects by some set dates. So we have been dedicatedly working towards that, and a major part of such projects have been completed. Still we have a lot of things to be submitted very soon. So that's why we got a couple of sessions not organized, as well as we had certain evaluation tests in between. So just the reason is the team was very, very busy during these days, and hence it was a little difficult to get the time and to organize that. But now we are in function again, and we will be continuing this project, and very shortly within a couple of sessions we'll be completing this project. We'll be discussing about all the parts of the mobile application designing and the web app designing, followed by then we have a next project in queue, which will be an artificial intelligence product, which we will be designing for healthcare, where we will be reading blood reports and we are going to read the test values of the people whose blood tests have been taken, and depending on those blood tests, we are going to generate some artificially intelligent nutrition kind of report for them, so that they can improve their health and they can have a happy and living life. Okay, now let's see. When the project finish and the next project starts, so very soon within a couple of days we'll be having this project done, and very soon we'll be starting that in a couple of sessions, and we have a lot of project in sequence, and there is a very good there is a great news for you all. We are actually bringing about 20 projects for learn which Praveen has been working with various corporate clients, and now we will be openly sharing those projects for discussions and for improvement on those applications with all of you. So we are shortlisting the interns as well for our web application projects, and we would like you all to have your evaluation tests, get them clear as soon as possible, and then it will be great for you all to work on those real-time projects. So we are having those projects shortly. We are starting within a couple of days. We'll be having a meeting. We are shortlisting the candidates only on the basis of their evaluation tests, and top 15 to 20 students over the basis of evaluation we will be taking up. So approximately with with the current result which I have seen for web application designing, I have seen there are approximately 15-20 students. I have seen those who have scored 100 out of 100 and 90 out of 100. So it's a very sure chance for all to get involved into the project, as well as depending on the number of availability and the number of requirements, we'll be extending the support to other students as well for the internship. Now, just let's get back to our project discussion. So guys, as you all know, we have started working on login and register application. And in the previous session, we have started designing some services, and I was explaining register services to all of you. So before we start, let us just quickly open Postman in brackets. I believe you all remember that how we generally use Postman and brackets. Now I'll just quickly connect to our server. So here, previously in the session, we have started working on Doubts app, where we had certain number of requests, and we actually started with the registration service. So for registration service, we have been sending some parameters to our server. Our server is located on 13.233.118.89, and over this register.php service, which is currently a core way of implementation of the services, along with certain name, email address, password, and mobile number, we have been sending this information for the registration purpose. And in return, we were receiving certain authentication tokens. Okay. Once we have got the tokens, we will get access to apply user comments. We can post a comment by a user, as well as we will be able to perform home post. We can reply to that post. We can like the post. We can ask questions from the user. We can answer the questions which were available in the Doubts app. You can also perform question answer, like you will get access to the quiz. You will get the subject wise quiz. You will get you will be able to get the quiz for the users, as well as you will be able to submit the quiz. The quiz evaluations will be done, and finally we're going to get the scores and results. Along with, let's just open brackets as well. So over the brackets, this is our server 13.2.1.89. I believe you all are connected to your AWS server as well, and you all remember that how we have started building these services. So let us just quickly connect. I believe since I'm connected with MTNL at the moment, I really need to have some alternate account so that I will be able to connect with that. But successfully, I think I've got the connection. Great. So now, once we have got the connection, I'll quickly show you what we have been doing. Under the vertical split, let's have some code. So we started with the register service as well as the sample register service. So this is the sample register service. Okay. And the second service which we have been working was the register.php. Okay, guys. So I believe the screen is visible to all the participants, and I'll just quickly cross-check on YouTube if our voice is audible to everyone. That's great. Yeah. So great. Now let's see. Let's go for it. So guys, now I hope you all remember, we have started working on the databases part. So we connected with the database with credentials. Then we have actually received the post request, and in the post request, we have received name, email address, mobile number, and password. I have also told you about the sanitization of the input in the previous session, where we can make use of regular expressions in order to sanitize the information available. As well as now the fourth section, which we will be covering today, will be our URI, how to validate the email addresses, followed by validations and transmission of SMS through an SMS gateway, which is your OTP service. And followed by, we will be working towards how we can insert into the databases and can perform various create, read, update, and delete operations. And once we are done with that, we'll quickly switch to that how these kinds of services can be implemented with Model View Controller. And it takes a lot of advantage. It provides you a lot of advantage because you don't need to rewrite a lot of basic codes which are already predefined. or which is very common, which has to be used in approximately all different kinds of applications. So that saves a lot of time for you. But collectively at the same time, it is a great advice that you all should understand the core part of how the system works. If you understand everything appropriately, it will be very easy for you to modify once the client requirement gets updated. Because a very important component of agile application development and delivery of agile application development is that the customer should be satisfied with the product, whatever you are building. If the customer goes unsatisfied, then there is no use of building a product. So in order to make him satisfied, it's always a good idea in order to accept the changes which are required by him, because finally, if he gets satisfied with the application, he'll be able to use it conveniently. And once he accepts that, once he proposes some updates, you guys need to be very sure about how individual components are working and connected together, so that it will be easily available for you so that you can modify it. Okay. Now, so let's just quickly see that. So you have to understand both ways. Now you will be executing certain statements, the prepared statements, so as to protect yourself from SQL injections. And let's just quickly, I'll just quickly make it to a single view, no split view, so that I'll just explain it step by step, and then we will be working towards this. So now what next I have is, we have done till the filter variable, where you can pass the input which you have received from the post request, and you can sanitize it. Once the sanitizations are done, now is a part of email validation. So one thing which I would like you all to do today, since we have to discuss a lot of concepts, I won't be coding step by step today, but I will be explaining you each line of code, and you all can quickly write your code. Okay. Now, to perform email validation, we generally use a service known as zero bounce. Okay, zero bounce is an email validator, and I would like to show you the account. Generally, I need to recall the password, but still, let's just try that. We'll go with zerobounce.com. So there is a very nice service for email validations, which is zero bounce verify and validate email addresses. You all can have an account on it if you want, as well as those people, those who are working on artificial intelligence and machine learning, can actually make a validating service in order to identify whether the email exists or not. You all can actually get started with 100 free email validation credits if you register today. So there is an option, you all can do that. As well as I would like to quickly log into that, and I would like to see whether, I'll just quickly try to recall if I remember my account. Otherwise, you all can quickly have a free account and test it. Okay. And let's just quickly try that. Okay, so I'll try a couple of passwords, otherwise I'll reset that. Okay, so okay, I'll just quickly check back. Or else what we can do is, let's just quickly go here into the get started section. Let's just have a new ID. So let's say I would like to get started with a new account. You all can create an account with me. Let's say I'll just try that with 007 Devansh at Gmail. What was that? Full name, Devanshu Shukla. Then I have email ID. Let's say we need to enter our business email address. Let's say I would like to quickly test that with this ABCD12345, something like that. Okay, 89206299494. I agree with the services and create a free account. Okay, let's just reset a new password. Traffic lights. Okay, so this time, okay. your email address will be verified to ensure that no credit card required, password do not match. Okay. So I believe we might get a mail here. So you all can quickly register with zero bounce. The process is very easy. Just you need to set up an account. And once you guys are done with the setup, you need to get an API key. So I'll just go to my account and quickly see if they have sent me an email, or else you can continue with the, I already have a key in code, but for you all to quickly integrate that service in order to validate, you all have to register an account, and you can get started with testing 100 validations, and post that you can create another account, or else you can subscribe to the service also. Let's see. So by the time that loads up, I'll quickly explain you what's happening here. So now, once you guys are going to get an account on zero bounce, you're going to get an API key from that, and I'll quickly let you all know how that API key can be created and can be accessed. So once you are able to log into your account, you're going to get that. Now, let's say we are going to get an email address which we have received from a post request, and we want to validate it. So one more thing which is very important, you all have to get the client's IP address, okay? And in order to get the client's IP address, you can define a common function known as getClientIP. So I have actually defined that in a file known as getClientIP.php. And in the previous session also, I've told you about that. I'm going to let you know that how we can extract the IP address of any client visiting to our website. Okay. Now, so here I have this file known as getClientIP.php. Then a new function known as let's have a vertical split, and I'll show you what that getClient.php is. Now here, so on the right hand side, you can see that I have my file getClientIP.php. Within that, I have defined a function. If you would like to have a complete view of that, let's just have it. So here the file looks somewhat like this. So we have defined a function getClientIP.php. Within that, initially, let's say we don't have an IP address initially, but we are trying to access the client's IP address from various information key value pairs, which comes under the server request. So in order to read a server request, whatever you are receiving at the server side, you can actually call the $server. This $server is a wrapper. It's similar to post request, which actually contains key value pair information. The keys are HTTP client IP. You can actually quickly check if the client IP is set. You can actually fetch the value of client IP and you can store it into the IP address. So this is sufficient. Sometimes it's possible that the connection is coming through a virtual private network, or it is coming through a proxy or anything like that. In that case, what you can do is you can make use of HTTP X forwarded, HTTP forwarded for, HTTP forwarded, and the remote address. So there are multiple key value pairs wherein the IP address could be available. So in case if you don't get it default in the HTTP client IP, there are 6 more options. You can actually access it from the HTTP client IP, X forwarded for IP, or the X forwarded IP, HTTP forwarded for IP, HTTP forwarded, or else the remote address. And once you guys are going to get the IP address, you can either save it in order to maintain the logs that what all visitors are visiting your website, as well as you can use it in order to make the verifications. So it's very easy. It's a very simple process. You have to write the simple if-else logic. And within this if-else, what we are trying to do, we are actually calling a function isSet. IsSet is a function which actually lets you know whether that variable is set or not, if that variable has some value or not. If it has some value, then you can actually fetch the value out and you can actually store that into a variable. So I would like to quickly explain you what is going to happen once we're going to call this getClientIP function. Once this function is called, we are going to check whether the $server with this key pair is set or not. And we can actually test that with the isSet function. If the information is set, we are going to read the key HTTP client IP from that server request, and we are going to store that value into the IP address. And finally, at the end, we are going to return the value of the IP address so that we can actually understand who is coming. And why we are fetching this IP address information, because this is important. We have to send this to zero bounds. Once they will get the IP address and the email ID, they're going to validate it. And after the validations, once you get a response like, yes, this email ID is valid, then you can actually save it into the database. Otherwise, what generally happens, a lot of people try to use false email IDs while making the registrations, and it does corrupt your user information base. So what you will be doing generally whenever you make any user register on your platform, the basic objective is to consider them as your customer and reach out them back with their email addresses or with the mobile information, so as to provide the notifications and the important information about your business, or else with respect to marketing as well. In case if in your database you're going to have fake email addresses and the false email addresses, then it's going to be very difficult always for you in order to reach out back to the client, and your services like your message services and your email services, which are costly nowadays, which are paid nowadays, it's going to be wasted unnecessarily. So it's always a great idea to have a appropriate database of the email information and the contact information of the users, and you should always hold it in your in the system. Now, once we got this, now I would like to quickly take you to the next part, that once we have received it, now what we are going to do, we will actually work towards sending a post request to the server. Now what we generally do, we actually make use of a URL. In order to send a request to validate the email ID, Zero Bounds provides us an API. API is an application programmer's interface, and that API is available at api.zerobounds.net version 2, and the file which actually validates is validate. So we are going to send a request to validate resource on api.zerobounds.net along with a couple of key value parameters. The first parameter is going to be the API key, so that they can validate whether we are an authorized user or not. If we are an authorized user, we are going to they will allow us to test the validations, and we are going to get the validity of the email in response. Followed by, we are going to forward the email address also. But one thing you all need to ensure that you cannot directly attach the string email address. You need to URL encode it, because the email addresses contains various symbols like @ underscore, dots, and there are many more. So it's always a great idea to Unicode it, so that the dot, let's say if somebody is using underscore, so the Unicode character for underscore will be transmitted. So it's always a great idea whenever we deal with web application data. It's always good to encode your data, okay, using the UTF-8 encode format. So once we will be encoding that, we are going to concatenate the value with the email key. So email is the key here, and the value will be the validation email, whatever we want to get validated, along with the IP address. So these are some certain information which we need to send in order to send a server to server request. So you guys need to understand one very important thing here. A user is going to send a request to the server, and server is going to validate that information with the another server. So if you want me to draw a quick diagram for you, I'll just quickly draw that for you. Let's say we are going to have a mobile phone. We are going to have a server, and the server is also communicating to another server at the backend for validation of the emails. Okay. So what exactly happens? A request has received on the server. Now the server will send it to Zero Bounds to validate it, and he is going to respond back whether the email address is valid or not. If it is valid, then we are going to save it into the database. Okay. So let's just quickly define. Let's say he is a client who's trying to access the service or who's trying to register. This is our main server, which is going to receive the request. This is the Zero Bounds. Let's say we are going to call it as ZB Zero Bounds. It's going to validate, and once we have the validated information, we are going to store that into the database. Okay, so something like that happens. So now one very important thing for you all to understand is you already understand about how we can send a get and post request. We have already tested that with Postman, and receiving the request at the server side we have already done. But now how server to server communication will happen. Okay, this is very important for you all to understand, the server to server communication. So generally for this, over the Linux machines, we make use of curl request generator. Okay, so in order to make use of curl, it's always a good idea that you all need to have curl and PHP curl facility installed on the server. So what I'll do, just quickly open terminal, and you all have to quickly get back to your server. So here my server is 52.66.125.129. Let's say I'll go here, ABCDE. There are many servers. You can use that 13.232 server as well. Let's say we'll actually go to the same server, 13.232. So the IP address is, I'll just quickly check back on my brackets. So I have 13.233.118.89. 13.233.118.89. So that's the server. So I have logged into my server. Okay. And here over the server, what you all have to do, you actually have to install curl. So do apt get install curl and PHP curl. So these are the two things which is generally required. It may be possible that the PHP is installed, but the PHP is installed, but you need to actually install curl on the server side, as well as the support of curl for PHP. Okay. So I hope this is now clear to all the participants that in order to have a server to server communication, you all need to have curl installed on the server side. So here is the command. I hope everybody is clear that you can actually install curl along with PHP curl, so that PHP will be able to communicate to curl and can send a request and receive the response from the server and use that response. Okay, so you all can do that complete process. Now I'll quickly take you back to the code here. So here, now you all can see our server can now communicate to zero bounds using the curl facility. So in PHP, what we can do is, it's not just with zero bounds. Whenever you have to make a server to server communication with anyone, like integrating with an email service or integrating with a, let's say with a SMS service, or else let's say integrating with payment gateways. It could also be possible, let's say in case if there is, let's say any API which you are trying to use, which is on another server, and you want to make this server communicate to that service, then also you need to make use of curl. So curl is very, very important, and you all need to know it 100% in order to make server to server communications. So now what we are going to do, we are going to initialize the curl with the curl init function, and you're going to pass in the URL. The URL is https API zerobounds.net version 2 validate, along with the API key, the email ID information. The email ID is encoded, as well as the IP address information, which I have already told you about, that from the server, you can actually get the remote address, the client IP address, and the forward addresses, and you're going to get the IP address. Once you got the IP address, you're going to initiate a connection. You're going to initialize curl for that connection. Now, you're going to set some 4 important options here. Okay, so you can see that we are calling a function curl set options. Okay, with this, over a current curl connection, ch, we are going to specify 4 important information. The first important information is the SSL version. Okay, secure layer. We are going to define that. We are going to quickly see, are we going to quickly accept the return from that server or not, which means, do we only have to send a request to him? We have to get some response back. So yes, we are going to define true. Then the connection timeout. So in case within this number of seconds, if the connection is made, then it is fine. Otherwise, it's going to be dropped. And there will be a timeout. In case if there is no request and response happening between the server and the curl, then after 150 seconds, the connection is going to be terminated automatically. So in case sometimes if you try to transmit some more data, or let's say some big data, and in case if the server is getting timed out, you can actually increase that time. So all this facility is available with curl. Finally, These are the common options which has to be set all the time. So you have to set these options commonly for all types of services, whatever you are trying to connect while server to server communication. So it's a very simple process. Define the URI of any service hosted on any other server, initialize the curl, set the important options, and finally execute that connection. Once you execute the connection, you are going to close the curl request and you are going to receive a response from them. Okay. So now you can see that it is going to give you a response. So once we execute this connection, we are going to receive the response, let's say zero bounce response. You can save it into a variable. This variable will be a JSON response. Okay. What zero bounce does, it responds under the JSON format. And just in order to remind you all, what is JSON? JSON is JavaScript object notation. You all have to deal with JSON a lot of times as it is a REST service. REST actually stands for representational state transfer. And why is it important? It is very, very important because most of the communications happening between client to server as well as server to server today gets the request and response in the REST representation as well as the JSON representation. So once we are going to receive the JSON, we are going to decode it with a default function available in PHP, and this is known as JSON_decode. And don't forget to specify true here. If you have not specified true, your JSON will not be decoded and you won't be able to process the response. Once you're going to get the JSON response, it's going to be very simple. You are going to save it into the response. And what we are going to do, we are going to actually get the status value from that response. Okay. So this is something is going to happen when we are going to test that. And once you have got the email status, you're going to check if the email status is equal to the verified status. Okay. Which means, we are going to actually read the status and we are going to save it into the output of the email status. And finally below, we are going to actually check whether verified status is valid or not. Okay. So before we proceed further, I would like to actually show you how these things are done and how you are going to actually execute this service of the zero bounce. So let me just clear this screen for a moment. Let us just quickly go here, clear, and let's just go for it. So we are going to actually define, let's say we had a sample request. Let's just have the vertical split and let's just have the sample. I'll open register.php in the next one. And within this one, I would like to open register.php here. So guys, now let's have a look. So what am I going to do? I'm actually going to here my request is sample register.php. Okay. So what exactly we'll be doing? Let's say we are going to set the curl options and we are going to quickly test how it works. So just to quickly show you what we are going to do, we will be handling here. So let's say we are going to receive an email address from our service from Postman. Once we are going to get that service, we say we are going to actually define the URL. So let's say we have defined the URL api.zerobounce.net along with the API key information. API key is important for us in order to perform this test. Let's say, so we have the API key, which we have got, let's say from zero bounce. And before that, I'll just quickly get back here and check in case if we have got any message from zero bounce as of now. So not here, but we can also check in case if sometimes the messages or the mails are received in the spam folder. So there is no spam here. Currently, I have not received any mail from here, but you all can actually try and check it out that how you're going to get the access token. It's very easy though. Once you log into that account, on the left-hand side at the very bottom, there will be an option known as API or something relevant. You can go to API option and you can get the API key from there. And once you get the API key, what we will be doing, we are going to define your API key, and you can change the variable here. Then you are actually going to define the email to validate. So let's say I'm going to create a value like email to validate, and let's just save that into mail. Okay. The email which we are going to receive, we are going to start. Once we're done with getting this, let us quickly call back the IP address. We are going to get the client IP, and to get the client IP, we have to include the file. Let's say get client IP. Name of the file is get_client_ip.php. Okay, so we're going to get the client IP. Once you guys have got the client IP, what next we are going to do? We are actually going to initialize the curl. We are going to set certain options, and we are going to execute the curl. And I'm going to show you the JSON response. So let's just go for it. I'm going to quickly define all these 4 options here. I will respond echo 0 bounds underscore response. Whatever response we are going to get, we are going to respond it back. Okay, everyone, I believe this is clear. So we have this service known as sample register.php service, and let us just now test that with Postman. So we have Postman here, and here let us just quickly see under government examination app. Yeah, here. So we have got this sample register service. So previously, you all remember, we are sending a request to 13.233.89 sample register.php. Okay. On the right hand side, you have your code, which we have already defined, that we are going to send a request to 0 bounds, and we are going to get the JSON response. Along with that, I'm going to send 4 post requests: name, email address, mobile number, and the password. Okay. And I'm going to check that with the these 4 information, which you all remember, I believe. This one, the name, email, mobile number, and the password. All these information you are going to get. Okay. So let's have a quick look at how we are going to run it. So once I send the request to register.php, now I'm going to send the request, and finally I have to get a response from 0 bounds service. And you all have to understand that what kind of response we are going to get from 0 bounds once we have the API key, once we make a server to server request to API.0bounds to the validate functionality along with the API key and the mail. So now you can see that this is the response which we have actually received from the 0 bounds. So what 0 bounds does, it is similar to an API. It's an API actually, not similar. It's actually an API. It's a service running at a company or at another server, which actually receives an email information from the user, does their own processing by sending some temporary test mail to that, and then trying to filter out whether any of that mail ID is registered with any spam servers or not. So kind of a business logic they have implemented in order to ensure that business. And what they are offering us is the API. And for every number of transactions which we do, we have to pay for it. So this is also a very nice idea for all of you, that once you all understand all these concepts, you can actually design your own APIs, and that can become a good business for you. You can publicly release your APIs on AWS so that the world can access this today, and you can integrate the payment gateways and a beautiful web interface for that, so that consumers can buy your services and can use your APIs. So all these things are also in queue. We will be designing a lot of API-based businesses in this application development process. So the overall idea behind organizing these sessions, I hope, is very clear to all of you, that we are actually building the developers, those who can actually understand how practically code is done in the industry, so that they can contribute in development of nice applications, become self-dependent, make new startups, make those services, whatever is available, what is required by people, into a startup or into a business, and just gain a lot of prosperity along with the wealth. So now let's just quickly have the response. So what they are responding, what zero bounce is responding us. It is responding us some key value pairs. So this information which you all can see is a JSON request. And in order to understand it better, it's always a good idea to view this on a JSON viewer. So there is a website, jsonviewer.stack.hu. You all can actually open that, jsonviewer.stack.hu. Under the text segment, you can paste, and you can actually view the JSON so as to understand it appropriately, that what information they are trying to send. So now you can see they are trying to send a certain information like the address, the status of an email ID, the sub-status of the email ID, whether it's a free email, whether it's a null value, what is the account, what is the domain, what is the domain age, is there any SMTP server information available for that, is there any MX record available for this email, is there any MX record for the host name which we are trying to have, then any information like first name, last name, gender, country, region, city, zip code, process. These kinds of information they actually try to send us back depending on the number of whatever email ID we are trying to send. Similarly, let us just quickly test back with another email ID. Let's say if I test that with 007, generally what they do is they don't actually specify the reason behind stating that this email address is invalid because the mailbox is not found at the server side, because currently the mailbox is connected with Json. So that's why it is happening, and it is saying that the email ID is false. But let's say if I test that with 007devansh@gmail.com, let's say that is going to be my email address. I'm going to send a request again. And now you can see that you're going to get information like that if somebody is trying to make use of this Gmail address, it's a valid address. Then you're going to get whether it's a free mail, so yes, it's a free email and all that information you're going to get. Similarly, let's say in case if I set something abcd@gmail.com, okay, and generally what people do, let's say a@a.com, whenever they try to register with a fake email ID onto a website and something like that, they just fill in any random ID. So let's say I'm going to send a request and quickly validate whether a.a.com exists. So you are going to see that no, a.a.com does not exist. So that means now we can actually filter out the appropriate information of any email ID, whatever we are receiving, and we can quickly save it into the database depending on its validity. If the information is valid, only then we're going to save it. So that will actually help you all make a good list of the contacts on your system, okay, or else on your server. So that will be very helpful in future marketing and other stuff. Now, let's just quickly get back. So I hope you all got a quick idea about how the service is done. Similarly, there is another server-to-server service which we generally do it for time password authentication, and authenticating with a device is very important for every login process today. And everybody wants to confirm whether whatever user is registering on their website is a valid user or not. So generally what we do, here is a very simple implementation of OTP. So what we have done, we have generated a random number. Let's say if you get a OTP of 6 characters, okay. So we have defined the random function starting from this range 11111 and ending up to the range 99999. So a random 6-digit OTP will be generated, and we are going to save that into OTP. Finally, you can actually define a statement, let's say a string. So we have concatenated that OTP, and along with that, we are actually trying to send a message. OTP is your one-time password to continue registration on Doubts app, let's say. So as soon as the user is going to click on register, he is going to send a request to the register service, and OTP will be generated, and we are going to save that into a string. Finally, you will be able to process this string once you have encoded it, because again, it's going to be a server-to-server communication, and all transmission type of information, whatever you are doing, has to be in UTF-8 encoded format. Okay, so it's always a great idea. Whenever you try to make use of a string, just encode it with a UTF-8 encode using URL encode function. Whenever there is a transmission between client to server or else server to server, whenever you are transmitting certain data, always try that with URL encoded format. Then again, you can see that similarly for OTP service also what we are doing. Once we have purchased an OTP service from any let's say SMS service. So let's say this OTP service we have taken from nimbusit.co.in. Okay, and the process is similar. We have initialized the curl. We have actually defined the API URL. We have actually defined the return transfer to true. Here, we are actually trying to send a post request to the service. Hence, we have defined the post as well. Earlier, the request which we have sent with curl was a get request. So the request which we have actually sent to zero bounds was a get request because the parameters have been sent in the URL itself, as you all can see that. Okay. So after the validate URL, we have concatenated the parameters in the get request itself. But similarly, once we are trying to do that with an SMS gateway, the current SMS gateway provider or the SMS service provider, what he is actually doing, he is actually accepting the post request. And in the post, we are trying to specify some information like the username, the password of the account, and name of the sender with which the label with which will be received in the OTP, along with to which number we have to send this message to, as well as the message what we want to send it to. And finally, we are going to execute the curl and we are going to close the connection. Then we actually check with the basic if-else condition. So now you can see that we are going to actually check in whether the status is valid. If it is valid, that's fine. Otherwise, what we are going to do, we are actually going to generate a JSON response. So to generate a JSON response, just we have selected a field, let's say output. Within that, we have defined a key. You don't need to explicitly declare output anywhere in the code. You can directly create this variable and you can directly use it. So you can use $output variable. You can define the key result. Within that, you can store that no, the response was invalid. So we define false and we send an output message. Please check your email. It might be wrong. Okay. And finally, we are going to encode this request and we are going to send it back to the client. So again, the client is going to receive a JSON request and it has to be processed and the information has to be fetched. But let's say if the status is verified, now there is a very important thing. You all have to write prepared statements in order to insert data into the registration table. So let's say, as you all know, we have created a table known as login. What we're trying to do, we're trying to call an if statement and we're actually checking that with respect to the connection which we have taken from the db.php file, which we have included at the top of this page, we're actually calling, using the connection object, we're calling a method or a function known as prepare. This prepare ensures that you are making a prepared statement. Prepared statement actually helps you all in SQL injections. And in case if you all actually want to understand how SQL injection work and how the websites have and even the attackers can upload the shell, it's always a good idea to go back to hackveda.in/121 under the ethical hacking course in your account. Within that ethical hacking and security course, we have practically demonstrated that how SQL injections are so dangerous that they can in fact completely compromise your server. Okay, so you all can go to hackveda.in/121 under your course ethical hacking and security. I believe I am here, ethical hacking and security. You have to go here, and there are a couple of practical sessions we have actually recorded on as well as on full stack website development as well. We have the sessions, but it's always a great idea to see both because you are going to get a lot of information. So here there is a very nice session which we have actually deployed on this hacking websites using SQL injection. So if you all will be watching this session, one thing which you all will get to know about right from the website, let's say, we have actually demonstrated the complete stuff of how that website looks like. And finally, how you can actually upload the shell like the hackers do and how they modify the index pages and all that stuff. and you don't need to use any specific tool in order to perform this. Okay, so that is one of the best options. At the moment, my internet connection is working a little slow. I think it's loaded now. So let's say here I'll show you. We had an application somewhat like that. Let it load. Okay, you all can actually watch this session, as well as there is one more session we have recorded here. Hacking websites with SQL injection is good, and there is one more session which I will be sharing shortly, where we have uploaded the complete shell and everything like that, so as to compromise that server. So you all can reach out to this site and you can learn it. Now I'll quickly get back here. So in order to protect against SQL injections, we always make use of prepared statements. Now you're going to insert into login. You're going to define the parameters in which you want to insert, like the name, email, mobile number, password, and OTP. And you have to define the values, and for each value you're going to define a question mark. Okay, so once you have defined it, then you can actually set in case if the statement does not execute. So once we execute con.prepare, we are going to get the response in the statement, and we are going to check if it doesn't get executed and we get the false response. That means the result is false and the preparation failed. Okay. So in case if you have not specified any parameters like appropriate email or mobile number, or if you miss the OTP value, or if you miss the password, which is compulsory to insert, at that point of time, you're going to get the prepared statement failed. Now, once you have prepared the statement, you have to bind the parameters. In order to bind the parameters, the number of question marks you have made for each field here. Let's say we have name, email, mobile number, password, OTP. We have 5 fields. So we have defined 5 question marks, one for each value. And then for each of these 5 values which you are going to insert, you're going to define the type of the value which you are trying to transmit. So the name, email number, mobile number, password, and OTP all are considered as strings. So you can define 5S. So each S is meant for one value. So the first S is meant for valid email. Second S is meant for the first is for valid name, second is for valid email, third S is for valid mobile number, fourth S is for password, and fifth S is for OTP, and so on. Okay, so you're going to bind the parameter, and once you have binded, it's fine. Otherwise, you're going to get that the bind failed. And finally, we have to execute the statement. Once we get the statement executed, that means okay, the account created successfully. So we are going to define that the output, the result of this execution is true, and the message which we are going to transmit back to the client will be an account created message. So on his application, he's going to get a message, account created. Okay, so like that. So this is how we actually execute it. Finally, we create a user directory, and once we create a user directory, we give them certain permissions, as well as in case if the account doesn't get created, we are going to get a false response on that. Okay. Now, so if you want, we can actually quickly test that with Postman, that how that service works. So here, let's say I have my register request. Over the register request, let's say I would like to test that with my friends' information. Let's say Praveen, we have PRVN .pn216 at gmail.com, as well as let's say the password is this 987 33 95231. So here is the request we're trying to send. We have sent a registration request, and you can see that finally we got a JSON response. We got the email status was valid, which we have read from the zero bounce request. And finally, the result we have responded that it is true and the account has created successfully. Now, similarly, if you go to the database now, you will be able to quickly check back that your information which we have just transmitted has been created. Okay, so I'll show you the database quickly. Use outsap, select star from login, and you can see that the final entry which I have done here is with Praveen, PRVN216. my password, mobile number, and you can see that a random 802724 OTP has been generated. Now this OTP will be sent to his mobile phone, is going to verify that, and once he verifies that and he does the login, we are actually going to get the account. A token will be created and he will be able to access the other services. So similarly, we will be discussing about additional services which are required for this project. Like the next service will be the login service, then how we can actually make a post on home, how we can perform replies, likes, question answers, QA likes, the quiz, the subject quiz, and how we can submit the quiz, all that thing you will be creating. But since now you all will be working in a collaborative environment wherein you will have certain restrictions about the access which is available to you for a project. So in order to do that in a company, what is generally done, it is maintained everything using a model view controller project. Okay, so that multiple people with multiple responsibilities for the same web application can contribute to the complete project at the same time. And during that contribution, the project manager will be able to test it, whatever is being done. The unit programmers can quickly test their units and how everything is structured in order to make the project. You guys are going to understand that. So before I proceed further, I would like to quickly check back any queries which we have, and further what is going to happen, Praveen sir is going to take up this session further, where he is going to explain you that how model view controller is going to be actually implemented. So today on your local machines, you are going to set up the model view controller frameworks, and you're going to understand that how we actually design products in a corporate environment. So guys, now here if you can see, let's say I have got certain queries. So sanitization process is not completed before. Actually, I have about the regular expressions part with the function preg match. So you can easily implement it. I have already told you about how you can have the regular expressions, how you can match the regular expressions out of the value, and you can implement that with preg match, and you can implement it. That's a very easy process. As well as the second is, okay, there is no more questions as of now. Okay, guys, so now what you all can do, now we will be having quick discussions on how model view controllers can be implemented, and our expert, Mr. Praveen, will be taking care about the project, where he will be explaining you about all the projects he is doing in, as well as what are the next projects he's working on, and for what kinds of projects he's actually recruiting the interns. So the overall program which we are organizing here is to identify the best interns which can actually understand how the corporate product development is done, and then they can contribute to our team in order to develop high quality products for a very long time. This internship, we are not looking for interns like an intern for a month and just for the sake of certificates and for the sake of letters. It's open from our side. If you want to be an intern for 1 month, 2 months, you can watch a session from us and you can implement that project and you can take a certificate and you can go back home. But our basic idea is to identify the right talent, those who are actually interested, to make them understand how the actual product development is done. Just come out of the scope of an institute-based learning, come to the corporate learning environment where you will actually learn that how the real products are being done, okay? Under the guidance of the developers, those who are actually building a lot of products for the industry, and with that information, contribute to the products which we are actually designing in, get paid for the products, get good stipend for the internships. So we have a lot of options available, but initially you have to prove yourself that you can clear the evaluation tests, followed by you all can actually contribute to development of products with units. Initially we are going to provide you certain units to build up, and once you are done with building the units, more important roles and responsibilities will be allotted to you all so that you can gain the real experience. And we actually want to give you letters of experience of, let's say, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, for the time you are in college. Dedicate your time with Hackveda 1-to-1. learn a lot of skills, implement those skills into making some great products, join us, get introduced with a lot of startups and with the people that how product designing is done in today's environment, gain that level of experience, and then get the experience letters in reward, which will be actually beneficial for you. One certificate for 1 day training in Python or on full stack development, or a 2 day training won't matter at all in the industry. And the industry doesn't care about the certificates, they don't even care about letters and anything. What they actually care about, the exact knowledge which you have, and the supporting documents and the certifications which can actually prove that you are knowledgeable. Okay. But finally, you are the one who's going to prove your knowledge with respect to the projects, whatever you guys have been doing in, and whatever experience you have. And any developer or any interviewer can actually evaluate within 5 to 10 minutes about the skills of the other person, or whether that candidate is suitable for his project requirements or not. So build that mindset. Getting a job is not like an IIT preparation. Okay, in IIT we have to prepare a lot of questions and we have to sort that out. But in the industry, the life is very easy. The recruitment process is very easy. You don't need to wander around learning कि मैं क्या पढूं जिससे कि मेरे को यही question पूछेंगे. That is not the approach in the industry which is followed. What they actually want is, whenever you're going to go for an interview, whatever experience you had with your previous work and with your previous company, they are always interested into that particular part. And what they think is, they always try to think that how they can make the best use of the skills which you have. In case if you're going for an interview without any skill, and if you think that you land up into a company and then you will learn the project while developing it, that won't be possible. For that, it's better to go for a startup or something like that, where the interviews are so tough. Okay, because they will ask you the questions like कि ठीक है जैसे IIT का सवाल हो. So all these things you all have to keep in mind, and you have to get prepared in that direction, where whatever skills there is no comparison when it comes to the actual interview process. Okay. But you may be asking, why is it happening in the industry like competitive programming? It is because to filter out the candidates. What generally happens today, to filter out the candidates, they need to have a mechanism, because every non-serious candidate, wherever he sees a job opening, he just pushes resume there. He would not even have read about the job description, about the skills required. He'll just push his resume there. So in order to avoid that, people have started conducting the evaluation tests today, and they have increased the level of evaluation tests also. The level is increased because the questions are new and the questions are custom. So if anybody is trying to mug up the questions without scaling himself up, that won't be helpful for them. And in fact, you can see in the actual coding competitions which are actually happening for fresher recruitment, like TCS Code Vita, and there are various with every individual company today, and there are many organized on HackerRank and many more. Even if a student passes 1 or 2 questions out of a pool of questions, you can see that he gets selected, because he at least have that logical skill, and he gets himself filtered out in comparison to a lot of people. So your time as of now is to actually work on projects, gain your skill level, understand the business, and every business today needs a person with diverse skills. If you have to be successful with respect to your career, first thing you have to keep in your mind that one technology, one programming language, sticking to a technology, sticking to a programming language won't work at all. Once you land up into the industry, there is a requirement at the industrial level, and the candidate has to fulfill it anyhow, be it whether he has the skills or else he has to learn the new skills and accomplish the requirement. In the industry, you're not going to get vice versa. Like if you are a let's say full stack developer or a PHP developer, so you are always going to get a project for PHP and you're going to be always paid for PHP. It's not going to happen. It could be possible that any next day you're going to have a project on Angular. It could be possible you're going to get a project on Node or else in Python. So then being a full stack developer, you need to understand all that stuff, that how Django works, how PHP works, how Visual works, as well as other different languages and platforms. So that's how you all have to prepare, and you have to implement the project. So that is the basic idea and everything, whatever we are trying to conclude in these sessions, that you all should be able to open your mindset, learn a lot of skills, practically implement all of them. Just don't run behind that internship letter. If that is the requirement, naturally you're going to get it on your email. We are ready to send internship letters to everyone who has just watched the videos and clear the evaluation tests. That won't be a problem for us. But instead, if you will be learning the stuff, if you'll be implementing in a right way, you'll be learning a lot of knowledge. And the knowledge actually comes by working on the projects only. Otherwise, there is no source of information. If you think that there is an open references API for, let's say, full stack development, and you're going to read all the methods, that is completely impossible, because there are so many methods, you won't be able to implement it until and unless you have an objective to accomplish. So here you are going to get a lot of chances on working on different projects, which Praveen sir is going to take care from now onwards. We all will be meeting for different sessions, as well as we'll be having the interns meeting very soon. So try to get evaluated with full stack. Even if you have scored less marks in your previous, let's say, evaluation test on full stack, but you can reattempt it again. You can gain more marks, because we will be only identifying and shortlisting the candidates, those who have very high grades of marks initially. Then we will eventually come downwards, and eventually will degrade the requirement quality. But in order to only identify whether there is a good candidate who might have scored a little less marks, but maybe is good at some designing or that part, so we'll be doing that. So just go for the evaluation test, try to score more marks on the evaluation tests, and get selected for the internship opportunities. There is no price, no cost at all for the internships, projects, and everything. Eventually, if you're working good, then there are options that we can award you paid internships options. Okay, so that options is available. So Praveen, I welcome you for having these discussions. Approximately, we do have more than 20 concurrent viewers, 22 concurrent viewers were there online, and many more will be coming and going in. As well as, let me just answer one more question. In bind parameters, we use SS for string. What about other data types? Yeah, so you can actually, there are 4 types of data types which you can define for bind parameters, and you can actually check bind parameters data types. If you have integer, you can define I. If you have date, you can define D. So you can use, check here, bind parameters here, PHP MySQL prepared statements. You can have a quick reference here, and only 4 data types are here. So one, I guess, float, one is F maybe. So you can quickly check back here. There are 4 types. Okay, one is block. So you have integer, you have double, you have string. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so there are 4: integer, double, string, and block. So you can define any of these types, and mostly all these types take care of all types of responses, whatever we will be having it. So you can do that way. So guys, so now, okay, I think I have not shared the screen. Just a moment. I'll just quickly confirm it. So once you guys can go to W3 schools, over this, we have a very nice article of bind parameter, and you can actually use these 4 types: integer, double, string, and block. So these are the questions now. So Praveen, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Devansh. And I would say that, I was able to get a pretty good insight about what students are able to get to see. What I was able to just, after 1 or 2 years of my development experience, I was able to understand the things that you were students, and that is very good for each and every student that they are able to understand these technologies. Because as an interview, I do not actually look at what is the latest technology that you have worked with, what is the latest technology that is suppose while you are joining the market or while you are going for a job interview, and if you just mention all the latest technologies that are in the market, I will not be pretty much impressed by that kind of resume. What I will be impressed with, if anyone knows or have a very good understanding about what sessions are and how cookies are stored, what is the difference between a session and a cookie, and how actually user data is persisted on a server, how database is stored, what is the difference between InnoDB and MySM. So different engines, and you know, uh, anyone who has a little bit of information about these basic concepts, I would be pretty much impressed by that kind of a candidate, and that actually gives me a very good feeling that all the students who are self-learning and who are actually enjoying the session, they're actually getting to know about some of the very advanced features that I would say that any of the developer will only get to know about after 1 or 2 years of experience. So I'm really happy that some of the candidates are uh, getting the real learning, and I will just also try to enhance that whatever Devansh is intending, that we are we are not here with the aim of getting more likes for our YouTube channel or anything like that. We are we are with an aim of collecting the right talent, and obviously helping them achieve whatever they want to achieve, and also if it is possible, make them a good candidate or better candidate of what they can actually achieve. So with that, I'll just start to share my screen, and with that, you will be able to understand what exactly, how exactly the corporate applications are built. So, in order to understand what exactly happens in a corporate environment, just a little bit of overview you had given just a while back, that all these concepts, all these minute details that you are explaining, we do not actually allow any of the candidates to alter those details, how login is maintained, how session is maintained. A company cannot allow any of the new developer to actually start working on that. So there is we have to make sure that all of these things are not altered by any of the candidate or any of the developer who has joined. So for that, there is a concept, I would say, a general practice for all of the application development in corporate environment, and that is the use of a pre-built framework. And there are different kind of frameworks with different functionalities, different every framework have their own folder structure, but the core concept that they follow is MVC architecture. So what is this MVC architecture? I will just brief about that, and uh, from any of the diagram, if you just go on internet and try to search MVC architecture, you will just get these kind of images, and that actually defines that what we are separating is that view. View is something that user or client actually interacts with. View is something that like a web page or web design that anyone has access to. Model is something that actually takes care of the database. The database is not actually we do not actually allow any of the SQL statement to execute just by as a raw statement. So model is something that I would say the class representation of all the databases that we have in our application, and controller is something that actually plays like a brain of this entire application. It actually links the view to the model, and it actually links the view to the database, the kind of restrictions and kind of permissions that we want to have for the application and for the users. So all of that is implemented using the MVC architecture. One of the most popular MVC architecture framework for PHP is YII. Why I actually stand for it is It has two different versions. One is PHP YI1 is I think is a bit outdated now. So what we will be working on is YI2 application. So what along with that, this is the framework that we will be using. Along with that, a general practice for application setup on the server is not that you can just push in any of the folder or any of the folder structure you can use. There is a concept of having a uh, virtual host. So we will also be going into that. That what actually virtual host is and how can we use a virtual host to host our application. So I know, I cannot, if I just go about details about how YA application is structured, I think it will take up a lot of time. We will be doing that while we will be installing YA application on our local instance. So let me just start the implementation of YA framework. So as I just told you that we will be using YI2 for this application. You can simply just type and download YI2. And by this, we just send to a page where you will have different kind of uh, ways in which you can install YI on your local, or you can get the framework downloaded from the internet. Now, one of the most commonly used pattern is composer. So there is one more keyword that I would like to give a brief about, and that is what composer is. If if we go about and search the internet for what exactly composer is, so composer is actually dependency management for PHP. So what do you understand of that? Dependency management. There are different PHP open libraries that are there for for that you can use already. These are pretty good tested, and these kind of applications have been tested several times by different users, and they are open for anyone to make use of and to make implementation of in their application. So I will just try to tell everyone. I would just want to know that most of the users, since I'm using Windows, I will be going through the Windows setup of it, but I will also be going through how, if anyone is trying to set this up on Linux, they will also be able to follow this way that I'm going through. But obviously, one thing, since I'm using the Windows machine, I will only be able to follow the Windows part of it. So if I go and click on Composer, for Windows user, you can just we will just have to do a Composer setup download. Since I already have the Composer installed, I will not install it. You just have to download the setup, and if you are looking for what you are, so you can just Google getcomposer.org, and from there you will just get the download page for that. So for Windows user, you just need to download this composer setup.exe, and you just need to install it like any other application that you install. Now, for Linux users, I would say that Linux user, you have to verify the download, because there are different setup and different versions of the setups. And sometimes what happens that when we download the application, the application is not properly downloaded. So what you have to do is you just have to copy the strings from here, uh, and you have to execute this on your terminal. If you're not able to execute PHP from your VM, or I would say the terminal, what you have to do is you just have to add the path of PHP folder in your environment variables. So if you're trying to do that, because even if we are working on Windows environment, we will still be working with the terminal, or I would say PowerShell. And we will have to execute some commands on this PowerShell application. So I would just suggest that you have this PHP variable set in your application. And just the way to do that is easily you can just, what I use for PHP and any of the LAMP setup on my Windows machine is I'm using XAMPP. XAMPP actually creates virtual for PHP and MySQL, and in order to have this setup and have the command, PHP command work on my terminal, uh, have the PHP command working from my terminal. So this is actually executing if PHP was not installed, just and I can just verify by typing PHP version. So yeah, PHP version of 7.1.30 is installed on my system. And how I was, you will simply go into XAMPP. In XAMPP, there is, I believe, Apache. Sorry. Uh, yeah, in the XAMPP root, there is a wide path in the environment variable, and I hope that you all are aware about how to set a variable in environment variable. Just for everyone to understand, I'm just going through the process. From your my this PC option, you just have to click on properties, and you just have to click on advanced settings and click on environment variables. Generally, you would want to edit this path variable, and to make any new entry, you will add this environment variable over here, or you can just edit that and you can make a new entry of your PHP folder. Since I have this, when I installed, I think this path variable was already set, and you can see that this is already available to me in my system's environment variable. That's why I'm able to execute PHP from my terminal. So with that said, I hope that you have a little bit of understanding of what Composer is, because I know that I just went through a lot of different modules that we will be using. It is not mandatory that you understand everything pretty well just right now, but I think over time you will be able to understand what Composer is and why we use Composer, uh, and why exactly we use II application. Uh, just for everyone to understand, just for everyone to recall, I am just going over Composer again. Composer is a dependency management, so that we can use any of the pre-built application, just like an example of a pre-built application would be just like an image editing extension that someone has made and made it public, and they actually also post this on Composer. And once that is available on Composer, we are able to include that extension into our application, and we are able to use it. So YII is also a open source project that is available for us to download. Once you have this PHP enabled, you just need to copy this path. And if PHP isn't enabled and the Composer is installed onto your system, you will just be able to execute uh, this command. So I'm in XAMPP folder, which is the web directory where all the PHP files are executed. So I have to go to htdocs. Htdocs is the web root for XAMPP folder. Here I will just to copy this YI application, since this is a link from the Composer path I'm using. So what I have to do is just copy the path that they have suggested and execute this on my terminal. So I don't know why it was not copying over for us 2-3 times I was trying. So when we have Composer installed on our application, we do not need to type PHP because there's just simply going to Composer command is also available to us in our application. I'll just show you. If the Composer is properly installed, you will be able to when you hit Composer, you will be able to get this command set that will actually tell you that Composer is properly installed. So if I just execute this Composer and create project, so what it is doing is it is trying to create, it is actually accepts the first parameter as the command that it wants to execute. So through this command, we are trying to create a project, and we are also specifying the library that we are going to use to create our project. So it is yisoft /y2 yi2 app basic. So this is a basic version of the yi application, and after that we are specifying that we are going to create this in the basic folder. So it is going to create a new directory by the name of basic, and once we hit enter, it will start downloading the resources for us. So meanwhile, it is downloading. I'm really happy to see that you are able to see how login is working. Meanwhile, when this is happening in the background, we can also go about how actually login works in the in a normal framework. So this is the of the framework that you will get. I have application set up my local environment, and this is the folder structure for the YI application that we are installing. So I'll just try to explain what exactly are different folders and why this application has so many in it when we can have this done using just the use of some files. Just keeping a track of how much percent is done. So there is one assets. So first folder that we are talking about is the assets folder. It is the first YI application. It actually, whenever we execute or whenever a user access the website, they do not actually get to actual JavaScript or CSS files. The files are minified, and the minified versions of the file or any of the resources that the client is using is stored in this assets folder. So these are the assets that are repeatedly used by our other application users. It is kept in this assets folder, and it actually keeps track of those. And this asset app, it actually tells about what all the dependencies that we have for our web environment. So in this web environment, I'm specifying that we are going to use what we are going to use, and these are certain classes that actually implement their own dependency and import their own dependency as well. Font Awesome is another library that we have used, so we have added that as an asset into our application, and the assets folder actually takes care of all different assets for our application. Commands is a functionality through which we can actually make a command line statement. So this YA application does not only works from the web. We can also make some terminal commands, and we can have those handled for server side execution. And terminal commands that we will go further. I would say that in any of the future lectures to come, we will be going over some of the commands that we can execute from terminal, and that will be actually be accessing the functionalities and controllers from within the application. So components, the next folder is components. Components is something that is available throughout the application. So anything that we define in this component namespace is available through the application. we can make use of these classes, and these classes we have defined over here. These exceptions are available throughout the application. So main use of component is that. Now configuration actually takes care of different kind of deep configurations that we are going to take, any parameters that we are going to take, any test case or any test database that we are going to make. So configuration file can actually take care of those. And now, since we are working on an MVC architecture, this is one of the most important controllers. We actually look at different controllers that we are creating. So I'll just give you a overview of how controllers are working. I'm not able to see any progress in implementation or download of this project. I'm not pretty sure how well the work is working. So meanwhile, we are going through the structure. I hope that everything will be downloaded. I am just looking at if you guys have any queries. Because I was also want to have a look at.
What are we doing right now?
Okay. Yes, we are actually. I am not pretty sure how much of application setup you have done on your local instance. So as I told you that this video is obviously available for you to have a later. You can reference this video again and again, and all the components that will be required for developing a local environment. We are just going through that. So we have as a component for development. There are some tools that we need to set up the web environment, and these web environment actually require small tools like. You need to have a PHP stack, and since you are working with sir on building the PHP application that is communicating with database, I hope what I assumed is that everything is working. LAMP setup is still done on your system. So I just went ahead and I have given a brief about what the YA application that we are working with. So currently, what we are going through is structure of the MVC application, and this MVC application, general practice of what you will see in any of the corporate projects. So what Devanshu sir was explaining to you was the core application, and I also would suggest that you have a strong and core practices, but just for you all to get the clear idea about what all frameworks and what exactly is a directory structure that is used for a professional web application. I'm just giving you an overview of YA application. So to that, now we were in controllers folder. This controllers folder is a collection of different controllers that we have just discussed about. Within an MVC architecture, we have different aspects of. There is a model, view, and controller. Controller actually cares of the entire functionality of the application. We are actually looking at the controller part of this, and with that, let me just go over and explain you how exactly controller works. Controller is something that actually takes care of for the application, your any of the logics of how the application will navigate. So all of this is actually taken care of by your controller. So in this controller file, we actually define different routes that are available. So all of functions that you're able to see, these are actually web accessible routes. So any of the requests that we actually get from internet, yeah, I'm able to see some while it is down. I just hope that you guys are also following these steps of downloading the composer and installing the YA application along with the composer application. So yeah, in this controller file, I'm just giving you an overview. So all of the actions we are able to see are actually part of web accessible routes. So action index is just like any index file. We do not, it is a self-executing path. Like whenever we have this index, uh, whenever a request will come, uh, index will be the first action that will be executed automatically. Now, all of the other functions that we are able to see here, uh, just like action post details or action add comments or any of the other functions that we are able to see here. These are the requests that user will have to make manually, but the index action will be executed automatically. When we get to the controllers and working, we will have a deeper session of what MVC application is and how controllers and models and views are actually connected together. But while the application is being downloaded, I'm just giving you an overview of the different folder structures that you will have once you download the YI application. So you can just understand the functionality now, and even if you're not following the steps that I'm following, whatever the steps I'm doing, then also you can just reference these steps later. This CSS is your class path, and all the CSS file you will keep in this CSS folder. Helper functions are, different sections that these are the commonly used functions that you would want to use just for a different purposes. Just like, I can say that I would want to have a class that will have some HTML functions. So I can keep all these functions in this helper folder, and these will be available for me to actually have whenever I need. Based on the functionalities, I can make these helper functions. So just like in this time helper, I can define different constants, and I do not have to manually type in 60 seconds. So whenever I use this constant of 60 of seconds, it will automatically convert it into this value that is assigned to it. So just to give you an example, this is just like a common function that we have in the application. Similarly, images is all the images that you will be uploading, or any of the images that you will be using in the application. You can keep it over here. The JS files and all the along with this mails. In this mails folder, we actually have different templates for sending me emails as well. So if you want to send some really beautiful emails, we actually have some templates defined in this YA application framework itself. And migration is something that we will discuss in a later session, because it actually tells us about how the database structure is to be maintained. So using migrations, we can actually define the fields that we are going to create. So what you have to do is the database structure that you want to keep for your application. You can define the database structure in this migration file. So a migration actually takes care of that. Models is the second component of MVC part, and MVC, the M in the MVC actually stands for models. Model is the class representation of the database that you are using. So you will not be directly be making SQL queries and all of the restrictions that you want to put on the database insertion or any of the database SQL queries. You can have these mentioned over here. Just to give an overview of how model functions actually help us. We can have these defined that the data type for these fields that we have in our database is going to be of type integer, and I would say that we can define the state the different database types for our different application or different fields. All of that is mentioned in the model file. Now, runtime is just like the assets folder that we had discussed. It actually takes care of the internal part of the application, like all of the pages that user has accessed and all of the different components that user has accessed. It actually takes care of those. It is not something that we have to worry about. And vendors is any of the external libraries that we have installed. So just like we have installed this YA application using Composer, we can further add few more modules using this Composer command within the same application. So if you are not able to get this through right now, we will be using Composer and we will be working on Composer in our projects to come. So I'm just making you familiarized with all these terminologies that are being used in the corporate environment. So these are what you're able to see in the vendors directory are the different libraries that we have used in this application. So by use of these extensions, you are able to see that we are using pretty long list of extensions in this application. So it is a pretty big project that we have that we are working on. And the next folder that we have is views. So it is actually the V of MVC application. So MVC actually stands for model, view, and controller. So the main folders that we have is models, controller, and last part that we were at is the view files. So these are the actual PHP files that are that actually contains all the HTML code and all of the front-end logic that that the user is able to see. So whenever a user interacts with our application, these are the only things. These are the only files that user actually have access to, and they will not be able to access any of the other folders that we have discussed so far. So that is how the MVC application is structured. I know that a further explanation for all of these things will be required, and I'm just keeping it short, just for for having these things just sink in to your mind that all these components we will be working with, and let me see. Okay, so it is still downloading the project. I believe that I'm connected to a wrong connection. All right, so yeah, now just to install all of the components that will make up the YI application. Okay, so with this, we are able to see that the installation for YI application is done. And if we do ls, we are able to see that a folder by the name of basic is created, just as we discussed, that a folder by the name of basics will be created, just as I said. So basic folder is created, and if we go into this folder, you will be able to see the exact uh, folder structure that we had discussed. Now, since we have done a lot of modification to the framework that I had just displayed, it has a little bit of some additional folders as well. But the core concept, the core folders like controller and views and model, mails, and everything is still in this vanilla application that we are able to install on our application, on our local instance. So just now we have this application on our local instance. There are two ways that we can have we can access this application, and we can simply go to the local host slash basic. Okay. So now you can see that this is not actually opening up pretty well. And the reason behind that is that for this folder is not actually opening up. All the scripts are not able to load up, and all the scripts are not properly executed. The reason behind that is whenever we have this application downloaded, you can see that in the HTML or JS path we have image sources reference and JS link reference, which actually do not have any of the slash before that. So in YI application or any of the MVC application, if I just go to any of the views, and since you are able to see that this is the actual part of the application, and whenever we have slashes before this any of the URL, it is executed at the base path of whatever web directory or web root that we are executing the application. So the basic web root for any of the application is the local host, but since our application is actually hosted in a subfolder of the local host, we are not able to view the exact folder structure, and all the different scripts are not able to load properly. So in order to overcome that problem, we need to have we need to understand yet another concept, and that is the concept of virtual host. So what actually a virtual host is? Virtual host is making a host virtual. So let's just break down this word itself. So if I just talk about host, host can be any of the applications, like any of the application. By any of the application, I mean google.com, google.com itself is a host, and just as you were able to see that any of the application we actually hit on, it actually goes to a different IPs, and we actually get to the actual host that we actually intended to go at. But if I would say that we can have these kind of domains hosted in our application itself. So let me just show you. Local. So this is I think my Apache has to restart. So you can see that there is one application that I have hosted in my and I'm able to use this domain. Now this is a local domain. It is not accessible to the internet, and if you will try to hit this URL, you will not get this domain. This is not actually a domain. So since this is not an actual host, we call this as a virtual host. So in order for each of the application to work, and each of the application to have a synchronization from the structure of what we have on the server, we just need to create virtual hosts, and these virtual hosts actually are domains that are accessible on only on the machine that they are created in. So how can we create a virtual host? Let's just go on to that. So virtual host simply are domains that are connected to your local file. So it is actually displaying the files that are local to your application, and any of the changes that you will make on this application will be visible to you by use of this virtual host. So let me just go and since we have this basic application set up on our local environment, we are going to connect this basic application through this through a new virtual host that we will be creating. So if you want, you can follow the steps that I'm following in order to create a virtual host. So virtual host, any of the hosts that we actually access, a first entry at the local hosts file, and where that host file is located, let's just put that. On this PC, you go to C drive and in the Windows folder, if you go to the System32 folder, and within the drivers, there is a folder by the name of etc. Here we are able to see that there is one file by the name of hosts. This file actually plays a lot of crucial roles, and let's just see the content of it. Since this is a system file, we will not be easily be able to access or make changes to this. So what we need to do is we need to open up Notepad, and in order to save our changes that we make to this file, we need to open this Notepad in administrator mode. Okay, so now I'm just opening up this file, and you can go ahead and copy that /hosts, right? So here you can see that all the applications that I was typing the URLs for, these are all referred to 127.0.0.1, and that is the part of our local environment. So let's just add another entry into this. And we will now basic, but let's say that we can have this by the name of yi.local. So the virtual host, so here we actually mentioned the virtual host name. This is the name that we will be using for accessing our application. So let me type ahead this domain, this virtual host that we are trying to create. So you can see currently this local host is not, actually any email IDs or any of the virtual addresses or any of the public addresses. So it is, the IP of this server is not found. This is the error that we are getting. So let's just save this and have this pointed out to our local machine. Now, if we go ahead and just after making an entry to this host file, we just need to restart our Apache service so that it actually reloads all the hosts that it has. So now when we click on this, we are able to see that we are going this yi.local is actually linked to somewhere something that we had in our local instance already. So it is going to a part of our local file. So it is now linked to one of our local folder. Now we do not want this folder to be associated with the local or root directory. So we want to associate it with the new basic folder that we have just downloaded using the yi setup. So what we will do is, since I'm using Xan, Apache will actually take care of that. So since Apache actually looks for different IPs, now the IP that it was able to associate this yi.local domain name that we have created, it was able to pointed to the localhost. Now we just have to point that domain to the appropriate folder that we want to link it to. So in order to do that, we will go into the XAMPP folder, and in the XAMPP folder, you will be able to see an Apache directory, and within this directory, you will be able to see this configuration folder. And in this configuration folder, you will have this extras folder. You can see there is one file by the name of vhost.conf. So within this vhost.conf, we actually list down all the virtual hosts that we actually want to have on our application. So if I open up this file in Notepad++, you will be able to see that all of the routes that I have pointed to my local directories, I have also defined the directory path that I want to link this URL to. And I'm just going to copy one of the entries from here, and we'll just be pasting that. So any of the resources, if you want, like just like this virtual host file, think it would be better that you just follow along, or you can just pause the video and you can type in all the document root and all the directory changes that I'm making right now. It would be best that you type it yourself so that you will have an understanding of what exactly the different options are and what exactly are different changes that we are making. So since we are going to make this, so what this virtual host is going, let's just go line by line for this, what exactly is the content of. So it is star.find port 80. It mentions that all of the requests for port 80 will be redirected. Any of the port 80 requests that is redirected to this virtual host, it will have a look at that. Now we are pointing, we have to define a different server admin. So server admin is defined at yi.local. So this is the path of server admin. I mean, if you want, you can keep this as it is as well, because it is not going to affect much. So now in this htdocs folder, the folder name that we had for our application was basic. So we will change that. And the server name is exactly the virtual host that we are trying to create. So yii.local is just, was it yii or yi2? So yii is the yii.local is the path that we are creating. So yii.local is the domain name that we want to link it to. And again, we have to mention the directory that we want to link this folder. We are mentioning the directory again because any of the folder, any of the directory permissions, or any of the directory settings are saved within this directory tag that we are creating. So you do not need to actually understand it line by line, but yeah, you have to make sure that all of the entries that we are making here also exist in any of the virtual host file that you will create. So further options that we have is that is actually defined about how the further rerouting within the application is done. But I do not want to smother you with all the additional information. We will have time to actually go through all of these details while we are working on this project. So we'll just leave that as it is. And now here is the error log. If anything happens wrong and any invalid request is made, or any application crash within the application is reported, it is also reported in error.log file. So we would want to have that within our application. So we will mention the exact directory path for our application so that we get the error within this specified folder. Right. So we have made all the changes that we had to do for setting up the virtual host. And Again, since we have just set up the virtual host, again, we would have to restart the Apache. Screen, make the request now. You will see that we have actually made, the path for this folder has changed. Now, in the YI application, or the main executable file is not present in the web directory that we have. So it is in subdirectory by the name of web. So since until and unless it is not able to allocate, it is not able to locate the index file, it is showing us the directory contents. So let's just have this changed. So all of the requests for this domain will go on to the new path, and it will go into this web directory. Restart. And if we refresh, you are able to see that the MVC application that we were trying to set up is now working. So this is the basic explanation of how MVC application is set up on your local instance. If you are not able to, if you were not able to follow through everything that I had went through, you can directly contact or you can post the queries as a comment. We will be replying to you. We will be replying to all of the comments that or any of the queries that you have. We believe that you actually have a little bit of understanding of how different MVC application works, or how what exactly is the structure for the MVC application is pretty basic for any of the newbie developer to join. And again, in the next session, I believe that we will be going through how different developers collaborate and how they actually join their code and they are able to work together. And any of the problems that are faced with working together. So with that, I would say that that would be it from my side today. And I will just hand it over back to Sudhir.
Okay, so Praveen, thanks a lot for such a wonderful session and such an explanatory session on what model view controllers are and how things are organized. So as you all can see, model view controller is an easy stuff to get started with. It might look a little complex for the beginners at the very start, but eventually you all going to be adjusted with the process because it's an easy process. Although the only thing is you all need to understand about the core components, and once you guys are clear with the core components, you all can actually implement all that stuff with a model view controller approach, and you can get your things done and sorted. So guys, that's all for today's session. I hope you all had a great day. Now, what next I would like you all to suggest, quickly explore a lot more information about the YI framework and how you can set up that. Even though the explanations are done pretty well by Mr. Praveen, but still you can quickly pose the questions on Talk to Mentor on the website, and our team will get back to you in order to help you get that set up. I will convey this information to the Talk to Mentors people, those who are actually handling the sessions at the moment, those who are handling the queries on our portal Talk to Mentor. So they'll help you out. They'll connect your queries with Mr. Praveen, and he is going to sort that out for you all. As well as one more thing which I would like to convey, uh, you all have to be get started with the internship project development very soon. So just brush up with the concepts, whatever you have done. Try to attempt the tests again in case if you think if you have scored less marks in the previous full stack sessions. So just try to score a little more marks so that we all can get you all evaluated, and then we will get started with the project development part. So that's all for today's session. Keep in touch. If you have liked the videos, go hit a like, as well as we'll come up with the next session very soon. On Monday, we will be having our next session where you all will get to know about the further stuff. So guys, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Happy learning.
Thank you all. Okay.